spent a lot of your younger years living in other countries, is that right?
Yes, I did.
You think that led you to developing interest in various styles of music?
Yeah, I think so. My dad was in the Foreign Service, and we traveled around a lot, and I just loved music. And a lot of it, I lived in Pakistan in the 50s, and I guess the only popular music we got was you get Radio Luxembourg. So you listen to local music, and I think I picked up a bunch of stuff.
What first attracted you to guitar?
Yeah, let's see. I started out taking piano lessons when I was a kid, like most kids from my era did, but it was never really my instrument. My dad had a secretary who was from Puerto Rico, and she had a guitar, and she and her husband came over with a guitar one day, and they showed me a couple chords, and that decided me on it. It was just the right instrument for me.
So did you go on to have formal guitar training after that?
I had very brief, quote-unquote, formal guitar training. I took lessons from a classical guitar player named Sophocles Pappas in Washington, D.C., and he was a great teacher, but he wasn't teaching me what I wanted to know, so I quit lessons and I started hanging out with my friends who were playing bluegrass music at the time, and I started out playing old-timey and bluegrass.
In terms of influences, who were some of the guitarists that really inspired you to really get serious about the instrument?
Wow. Oh, well, a lot of guitarists that were not in my discipline. Segovia, the great classical guitar player, Sabicas, the flamenco guitar player, guys like that from that era really wowed me with the guitar, but that wasn't my music. My music was contemporary stuff. I started listening to blues, and in the beginning, I guess, a lot of the rockabilly stuff, because at that time I lived in Washington, D.C., Carl Perkins, Gene Vincent, Jim Burton, who played lead guitar on the Ricky Nelson stuff, guys like that.
When Jefferson Airplane got together, did you guys have a particular sound in mind, a pre-plan of what you were trying to do there?
I think that Paul and Marty had a sound in mind, because they were vocalists, and there's a lot of vocal arrangements in the Jefferson Airplane. For myself, I had never really played in a band before. I played in a garage band in high school, but that doesn't count. So it was kind of like on-the-job training for me, and I was just trying to fill the spaces.
I believe you were the one that came up with the name.
I was. Actually, a friend of mine came up with the name. We used to come up with funny names for ourselves so we sound like semi-authentic blues guitar players. One of my friends was Blind Outrage. Another guy was Little Sun Goldfarb. And I was briefly Blind Thomas Jefferson Airplane.
Do you remember your first gig as Jefferson Airplane?
Yes. Yes, I do. It was Friday the 13th, August of it's coming to me, 1966, I believe. Mm-hmm. And that would have been at the Matrix in San Francisco.
Right, and what do you remember about it?
Oh, gosh, let's see. Well, I had an electric guitar at the time. I just got a Rickenbacker 12-string. It was my first new electric guitar. It was all pretty exciting stuff, and we had a very minor piece at the Matrix that we were kind of playing at our own club. Actually, at the time, I remember thinking, this is as good as it's ever going to get.
Yeah. Do you have any vivid memories of some of those major festivals back then in Monterey, Woodstock?
Ooh, let's see. Monterey was the first festival. We done a couple jazz festivals before that, but the Monterey Pop Festival was the first festival where it was nothing but our peers. And I remember it was just a great happening. It wasn't a very large festival. There weren't that many people, and you could walk in the crowds, and people didn't harass you, and people were selling stuff and hanging out and partying, and it was just really a lot of fun. Woodstock, on the other hand, there was, I don't know, I say 500,000, there might have been more, but there were a lot of people there, and it was just kind of overwhelming in a way. Mm-hmm. But as I was telling one of my students the other day, once again, as a performer, you stand up in front of that many people, and they're listening to you. And at that time, I thought, this might be as good as it gets.
What was the main impetus for you to go on and form Hot Tuna?
Well, the first Hot Tuna record was pretty much all the songs that I'd learned when I was learning to play fingerstyle guitar, and I'd kept that up all through the Jefferson Airplane. I mean, I was basically a fingerstyle blues guitar player, and Jack and I started doing some shows together, and after a while, it just got so hectic working in two bands at the same time, and I had to make a decision, and the decision was Hot Tuna.
And how important was it for you as a musician and through Hot Tuna, and I guess also your solo work, to show another side to yourself as a musician outside what you were known for with the Airplane?
I guess it's been, I don't think about it that much, but I guess in reality it was probably very important for me, because that's really that's really who I am. I mean, there's the other aspect of me too, the electric guitar player, and I still do that. But basically, I think of myself more as a traditional American guitar player, whatever the heck that is, and I've been able to make a living doing that most of my life, which is pretty good.
So you did feel the need to have that other musical outlet.
Yeah.
Yeah. Now, I believe Hot Tuna wasn't the first name selected for the band. There was another one rejected?
No, actually, that's an evil rumor.
Is it really?
Hot Tuna was the first name for the band, and I'll tell you what it means. We used to do, or we still do, a ragtime song called Keep On Truckin' Mama, and there's a line in the song that says, "What's that smell like fish, oh baby?" And we were doing the song, and somebody yelled, "Hot Tuna!" And I thought, that's a great name for a band.
Yeah. Oh, well, there's an old rumor put to rest.
Well, there you go.
Yeah. Were you finding a whole new audience with Hot Tuna that perhaps wasn't as attracted to the Airplane?
In the beginning, I think that we got a lot of spin-off audiences from the Airplane. People were interested. People would have preferred maybe to see Jack and I in the Starship or the Airplane continuing, whatever. What's happened over the years is that we keep on finding new audiences, both for myself alone and Hot Tuna, and it's truly a blessing. We've been on the Further Festival that's a Grateful Dead thing for the past couple of years, and we're on it again this year. And as a result, we've reached a lot of young folks that may not have come to see us in a bar, or maybe they're not old enough to come to a bar. Who knows? But in the last year, we play a lot of shows, and there are these people. I'm wondering, where do they ever hear about us?
Mm. Line up now.
The lineup in Hot Tuna is myself, Jack Casady playing bass, Michael Falzerano playing guitar and mandolin and also singing and writing some songs, Pete Sears on keyboards and accordion, Harvey Sorgan on drums, and I have a trio that my current solo career isn't really very solo. It's actually Pete and Michael and myself. We just did an album too, so we're cranking music out all the time in different formats.
Terrific. I believe there are plans for the re-release of the RCA catalogue.
Correct. As a result of the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, RCA has started to re-release a bunch of Hot Tuna stuff, Airplane and Starship stuff. And needless to say, they finally did a box set for Hot Tuna called Tuna in a Can. They didn't put very many copies of it out, but it sold out. And so I think they're going to wind up re-releasing all the catalog, including my 3 RCA solo albums.
Right. Will you have any direct involvement in that?
Actually, I don't really have to do much because our old manager from the Hot Tuna and the Jefferson Airplane is handling it. For a while, RCA did some re-releases where I think the digital remastering wasn't really remastered, but they're really doing a great job now, and all I have to do is, they say, what do you think about re-releasing this? And I usually say, yeah, it's a great idea.
Now, let's talk about your guitar camp. I'm sure you're very excited about that.
Yes, you bet.
What was the inspiration for getting that together?
Well, it's when you were asking me about if I ever had formal guitar training, the answer was no, I didn't have much formal guitar playing, but many people have helped me to learn, and they're still helping me to learn. And it was just a really nice idea for me to be able to give some of this back. And so my wife and I have been banding this idea for about 6 or 7 years, and last year we finally got off our butt and actually borrowed some money from the bank. We've built 21 buildings down here in southeastern Ohio. We're going to open in a week and a half.
I see. And I've had a look at the catalogue. I had one sent over to me. It looks terrific. Can you just, for our listeners, just run through the setup there?
Sure. This is really funny because when we get into this, I usually have to ask my wife what we're doing because she's my long-term memory. But in any case, we're going to have a number of guest instructors, and I don't have the catalog in front of me, so I can only tell you sort of off the top of my head that over the summer there'll be all the guys in Hot Tuna. Rory Block is going to be there. G.E. Smith is going to be there. Chris Smithers is going to be there. Roy Bookbinder will be there. A slide guitar player from Colorado named Mary Flowers will be there. And people that, now that I'm on the spot, I can't think of right now. So we have a number of different sessions. Each session is a week to 10 days in length, and each one will feature different instructors. I'll be there all the time, except for the Further Festival month, but other than that, we're going to rotate instructors.
I think I read one of our local boys is going to be there too later on in the year, Jeff Atchison.
Ah, you're absolutely correct. Yeah. Thank you for jogging my memory.
Now, actually, I spoke to one of your other instructors a few weeks back, Rory Block, and
He's the greatest.
She was really looking forward to getting down there, and she mentioned that she finds that teaching others guitar helps keep her own skills intact as well, or keep them sharp. Do you find that as well?
Absolutely. There's no question about it. When I've been playing for almost 40 years now, and sometimes you just take your playing or I just take my playing for granted, and when I have to break things down, I start thinking about teaching things, sometimes I realize, what am I doing? And in the course of dissecting that, it sharpens my skills up. Plus, you're always learning stuff from your students, too.
Yeah. You wish that perhaps a facility like this had been available when you were starting out?
Oh, yeah, it would have been great. Although I probably couldn't have afforded it because even though I think that we're pretty reasonable, I remember a friend of mine, one of the guys who taught me to play fingerstyle guitar, played with the Reverend Gary Davis, who was charging the massive sum of $3 an hour, and I couldn't afford to take lessons, so it just goes to show.
So what kind of response have you had so far?
With not having really done any advertising, we've had incredible response. And I'm hoping that next year will be as good. I think we're almost full up for this year.
Wow. So
it's amazing. It's truly amazing.
What's the mix of people coming? Is it mainly experienced players, or are you getting beginners as well?
We're encouraging, people of all levels. We have a youth week in August where we're going to have kids, but some of the kids are not beginners. So we'll have the ones that are a little more skilled coming in at earlier times, but we also have adults that are fairly, in the beginning stages, and we'll just, cater their classes to them.
So generally, what do you think would be the common goal of people coming there?
Ooh, that's a tough one. I really don't know yet because we haven't started.
Yeah.
It'd be interesting to see what that is. I normally encourage people when I'm teaching them to really just have a good time. I mean, when somebody says, I want to be a rock star or whatever, I want to grow up to be a blues man, usually I say, hey, what's going to happen is going to happen. Play the instrument, love to play the instrument and play it a lot. And
everything else will find its own course.
It did for me.
Yeah. At the Guitar Summit tour, which you were involved with.
Oh, that was great. Rory was on the one last year, I know, and I was on one a couple years ago. It was myself, Kenny Burrell, Steve Morse, Manuel Barreco, Stanley Jordan. Man, it was incredible. Each one of us representing a sort of a different musical niche. We each did a half-an-hour set, and then we got together at the end of the evening for a jam. I mean, it was just amazing. I mean, some of the guys I wasn't really familiar with before.
Yeah.
But Kenny Burrell, I've been a fan of his for years. I mean, he is, the remaining swing guitar player, and wow, it was just really exciting stuff.
And I guess it may have been a way also to introduce yourself to even a newer audience again, because people...
Right, and also introduce my noisy, God bless them, audience to other guitar players too. I mean, we're playing at the Dallas Symphony in Dallas, and most of the audience is wearing, tie and black tie stuff. Mm-hmm. But God bless, there's a bunch of tie-dyed folks there too.
Now, you were involved in the Jefferson Airplane reunion back in the late 80s?
89, yes.
Yeah. How do you look back on that now?
Well, it was actually somewhat traumatic at the time, and I'm not really sure why now, But as I look back on it, but maybe I was just in a more complaining mood then or something. I think I had a pretty good time, and it really didn't go anywhere, which is kind of unfortunate, because when the tour was over at the end of the 6 or 7 months, however long we were together, the band was starting to be cohesive, and then we just quit playing together. So I guess that was sort of a letdown. But I got back into the music business. I've sort of been out of the mainstream music business for a while, and I learned to appreciate how nice it is to be able to do stuff on my own.
Yeah. So do you think the reunion achieved what it set out to do? So
I'm not sure what it set out to do, and I'm not being facetious here either. Yeah. I really don't know. Probably not. I guess Paul would have liked to have become a current rock star again or something. Yeah. I don't know. I could be just projecting on that. So maybe it didn't. It was okay for me though, because like I said, I got to go back into the studio with modern stuff. I met a bunch of people, as a result of which I have my own studio now. So I really learned a bunch of stuff. So for me, it wound up.
It was good for you, yeah.
Yes, yeah. Absolutely. Thanks.
Now, you Hall of Fame?
Yes.
How do you look on that honor?
I was absolutely thrilled. Some of my rock brethren and sistren, kind of diss the Hall of Fame, like, how can you have a Hall of Fame? Rock and roll is supposed to be an outlaw music, blah blah blah. I thought it was great, And the Hall of Fame is in Ohio, which is where I live, so I've been there a bunch of times. And I love museums. I think they've really done a great job with it. I'm really thrilled to be there, and I think it's an honor.
Now, what's the extent of your live work with Hot Tuna these days? You mentioned the Further Festival.
Right.
Outside of that, what else do you do?
Well, Hot Tuna is an ongoing work in progress. We have a new live album we just did from a small club in Japan from last year. At some point this next year, we've talked about this for a while, and it could actually happen if I can get everybody to come to Ohio. We're going to do another studio album. We tour as Hot Tuna probably, I'd say maybe 3 months a year.
Mm-hmm. And you're comfortable with that?
We learn a new song.
And 3 months a year, you're comfortable with that?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. New solo recordings. Anything in the wind there?
Well, the only, as I said, me solo is right now is Michael and Pete and myself.
Yeah.
We just did a new album for Relics Records. It's going to be out probably the beginning of the Further Festival. It's pretty much a traditional rhythm and blues album, and I really like it. And as Michael pointed out, it's the first time in years that I've done an album with the guys that I actually play with all the time. We can play every song off the album, and we do, and I love that. You know, as opposed to having some complex studio thing that you can never quite get a handle on in person.
Recapture, yeah. Now, I was going to ask you about your plans for the rest of '98, but I guess they all revolve around the ranch.
Well, the ranch is going to be until October. I will be doing some jobs and doing the Further Festival. Hot Tuna we usually do a month tour in the fall. That's going to happen again. Where we have been fortunate enough to be at the Fillmore Auditorium in San Francisco for New Year's the last 3 years. We hope to be there again. And that pretty much takes up '98. And we'd love to come down your way sometime.
Oh, look, we're waiting for you. We'd love to see you.
Well, harass somebody to call my agent, for God's sake.
Oh, will do. I'll put the word around.
Please.
Now, if you had to pin it down to one thing, Jorma, what would be your key to survival in rock and roll?
Ooh. Well, I think optimism is mine.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you go through good times and bad times, and I know some people that just get devastated when times aren't so good. I don't know whether I'm optimistic or just dumb, but I just seem to plot ahead, and ultimately things get better. I've been very fortunate in almost 35 to 40 years of playing. I've been able to make my living doing that, and I'm thrilled. Well, as we say down here, just tickled pink to be here.
Yeah, well, look, that's a great philosophy on life in general. Remain positive. Okay, look, I won't hold you up anymore. I really want to get back on your tractor there.
Yeah.
Thanks for your time.
Listen, thanks a lot for calling, and I'm serious. We'd love to come down there sometime.
Well, we'll see what we can do. I'll put the word around for sure.
Thanks, man.
Okay, take care, Jorma.
You too.
Bye-bye.